Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we start, I would like to draw your attention to what I can offer you as a master coach. I can help you to focus on your why with clarity, uniting your passion with your purpose with a plan to create the life you truly desire. Book a free 20-minute coaching call right now via calendly.com/Amy Rowlandson/call, and we can take it from there. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Joe Glover. Joe, welcome to Focus on Why.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a long time in the calendar. I'm very, very impressed with your organisation. So thank you for having me.
Well, this is the thing. I have all these wonderful conversations and then I have to break it to my guests. It's like, oh, it's really lovely that we've had this conversation, but it's going to be quite a few months before we actually get you on the show. So yeah, that is sort of way of being, unfortunately. But thank you very much to Simon Haig for bringing us together. Simon was my guest back in episode 307, where the episode was called Back to Nature. Really, really great episode. And he made a very kind introduction to you. So here we are.
Yeah, he's a good egg. I like Simon a lot. He's very giving. He's a giving person. So yeah, he's a good person. I'm grateful for you taking the time as well.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that you talk about gratitude and giving, because that is the focus of this podcast. Purpose is all wrapped around that. And I'm sure we'll dive into your purpose very soon. But firstly, I just want to ask you, Joe, what is it you're focusing on at the moment?
So it's funny. I wrote a LinkedIn update this morning where I broke down a thought that was useful, something I'm working on, something I've done successfully, and someone that people should know about. And I shared this openly with number 2, the thing I'm working on right now, the thing I'm focused on right now. And this is probably this week rather than as a life purpose, but this week is guilt, which means to say that you and I came on as a bit of behind the scenes for folks to the podcast today, and we came on, and the first things that we did was sort of shared with each other how busy we are, and I'm not usually like this. I regularly sort of speak about balance and how important that is. And I have found myself in a very busy patch this week rather than, months and months and months on end. But my reflection on that is that I've got a series of people around me, whether it's my wife or employees who, or even the community when I turn up to run our events, who I don't necessarily reflect that I'm doing the job that I could be doing for them one way or another. I don't feel like I'm keeping myself to my own standards to a certain extent. And that's an hours in the day thing. But there's a reflection there, which is like, there is probably some guilt associated with that. The interesting thing about that observation, without meaning to close the loop too early for the podcast, is that whenever I sort of have this conversation with people and say, I feel guilty about not being there in the way that I'm usually there for you, most of them turn around and say, what are you talking about, mate? You're actually all right. So I think as much as I introduced the answer to this question with guilt, I think what I'm really working on as I speak is releasing guilt, because nobody else is holding that on for me. So why should I hold on to that for myself? I wouldn't treat other people that way. I'd be far more forgiving of other human beings. So maybe I should be a bit kinder to myself.
So is this linked, Joe, to your own personal achievement and the standards and expectations that you are giving yourself?
Personal achievements are an interesting way to phrase it, because I have an uneasy relationship with personal achievement. I think I recognise my contribution to my professional success, to my personal success, and I've been on a journey of that where I would start. In the past few years, I would probably begin in a place of saying, "Oh no, I didn't do that," or no, that wasn't me. And then over the course of time, I've probably begun to acknowledge that, yeah, I actually have done some things, and they're quite useful, and that's nice. So, but even acknowledging that is somewhat uncomfortable. Although as I've got older, I've sort of become more comfortable with acknowledging that my contribution has done something for someone somewhere. I think the second half of that question was about standards, and yeah, I hold myself to a higher standard than I would hold anyone else. You know, I don't really have any celebrity examples, but someone I like seeing work sometimes is someone like Gordon Ramsay. As much as he wraps his standards up in a very different way to what I would do, undeniably the thing that drives his sort of almost anger a lot of the time is a dedication to standards. And standards is an interesting thing because actually I wouldn't say that there's a line in the sand for me, which is we do this, we do that, and if you do not do that, then we are doing it wrong. But what I would say is probably it's more associated with character traits of doing the best that you can, being proactive, having a bit of fun, and doing it for other people, and sort of doing the best job that you can for them. So standards is probably I haven't really ever unpacked it, but I'm probably closer to not necessarily feeling like I'm holding myself to the attitudes that I regularly do, and that are important to me.
And there's a great level of humility in what you've just shared, in actually sharing it and being vulnerable and sharing what you've just shared with us, but also in the discomfort of acknowledging your contribution as well.
Mm-hmm. I don't think humility is the label you put on yourself. almost by definition, right? So, but yeah, no, we're all only people, right? It's a stupid example, but there was a scene in a very bad film a long time ago called War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise in, and so I know that it was theatre and the books first, but the Tom Cruise adaptation of it. And I would have been a teenager, early teenager when it came out. And there's this scene where the aliens come down, and this is a horrible analogy to be sharing. I'm so sorry to anyone listening right now. And the aliens come down, and everyone's like really interested by them. They're sort of walking up to them, and then suddenly all the aliens start shooting. And in the scene, you got like a rich person, a poor person, a young person, an old person, and every one of them is vaporized by these aliens immediately. And I don't know why I took like a lesson from that, but I think the lesson that I learned was, that we're all only people, right? So if there's a life lesson in that, it's that we can all be vaporized by aliens in a moment. And so, so don't think you're too special, because the aliens will get you. So, I think there's always a sense that we're doing something cool, but at the end of the day, it's we're all only people, aren't we? We're all just doing our best, and that's all I ever really feel like I'm doing or trying to do is just doing my best. So anything that comes from that is cool.
And might there be a deeper meaning to the metaphor, the analogy that you just used there, which is that there is a pressure to perform before your time is up?
Oh God. Okay. So now we're going deep, right? Yeah. Like I think about death way too much. Like seriously, like big time. So I had a little health scare over COVID, and it wasn't a big one, but it was just like it was probably one more wrapped in my head than it was in my body. But it was enough to confront me with the idea of mortality for the first time, even as a 31-year-old man or a 29-year-old man at that point in time. I think if I combine that with experiences which I've shared in the past, which is stuff like when my granddad died, and when my granddad died, then I sort of reflected on him and his life, and the interesting thing for him was so he lived an incredible life full of achievements. So he was a paratrooper, he was a professional football player, he was a teacher, he was a hard bastard, but he was all underpinned with love. and kindness, and especially love for us as a family. I remember one time, we were sort of discussing war as a family, and he would have been like a 78-year-old man or whatever at that point, old enough that he shouldn't be going to war, basically. And he said, I'd do it in a heartbeat if it was for all of you, which was cool. But I think about my granddad, and I think about other influential figures in my life who have since passed, and I don't think about their achievements as much as I think about the character traits that they've left in me and the people around me. I'm gonna, and with my granddad, that was traits such as bravery and courage and love, love despite being outwardly hard. And so, looping all these things together, there was a period of my life where I was sort of like thinking that I would be defined by legacy, the word legacy. What did people think of me after I died? And I think, truthfully, that doesn't matter to me anymore. I think about my granddad, and legacy has been replaced by something a little bit more silent, which is a silent legacy, which is the thing that I'm determined to leave behind one way or another, is that like the world can be a kind place, and sort of spreading kindness and positive traits in other human beings one way or another. And I call it a silent legacy because I don't ever expect that other people will know that it was me or my influence. I don't need a statue. I just like to think that like somehow by my life touching someone else's life, that they might sort of share those thoughts a little bit more. And so, yeah, like on the daily, I'm probably thinking about that sort of stuff, which is, if I'm not about anymore, are people a little bit more kind? And so, yeah, that's the guiding light right there.
It's so interesting that you're focusing on these traits and you're describing them as traits, and they are for sure. They're also values. Most people would call them values, and how they would be the guiding light for them. Do you discern a difference between the two?
Not really. I think a trait is probably something which people would say is something you do, whereas a value would probably be something you feel um, on a very high level. And a value would be something that runs deep to your core, which influences your traits. Probably, if I was to put them in some kind of hierarchy, um, I'm not sure, given the examples I've given today, whether it makes too much difference. Um, but I'd welcome opinions on that. I don't have a strong opinion on it. So
I'm surprised you don't, because your reflections run really deeply. You don't take to things on surface level. You analyze and you reflect, and you then bring it to your work and also to your just life generally. It seems to be that everything you're doing is in complete congruence with one another.
I feel fortunate in that way. I think I kind of think about what I feel like I've done with my career, my professional stuff is create a field I feel comfortable playing on. And so I played a lot of football growing up. That was what I did. And so when I reflect on the Marketing Meetup journey, then I feel like when I started that, then I was just playing football by myself. I was on a field playing football, and then over the past 7 years, then 40,000 people have joined me on this pitch, and we're now playing football together, which is cool. If you ask me to subsequently play rugby on a different pitch, then I'll be useless again, and so I feel like what I've created for myself is, in effect, a very nice field with a very nice football pitch, and very happily playing on that. And so that congruence of like creating a safe space for me to be me and for me to do my thing is certainly true. I'd like to think we carry that through in my personal life too, as being dad. But I think uh, it's very, very clear to me which comes first, and it's definitely not the example which I just gave, which is the personal stuff comes first, and I feel like potentially, so you and I were reflecting before about being a parent and stuff like that, and this element of control. And I actually feel quite in control at the marketing meetup. But it's not my job to be in control at home. That's not a word that I want associated with with dad. Controlling. And so there's probably just a different part of me which comes to the fore at home, which is the one where love is number one. And you can't love your kids too much in that way.
Yeah, they're incredible. And on slightly different ends of the scale of mine being having left home now, and well, one of them has, another one soon to. It's such a privilege to be a parent. I do feel an honor there in terms of you don't control them for sure. That's not the right word. Absolutely. You have an ability to nurture and support and free them in terms of allow them to live with independence. And that is a gift. It's a gift to be a parent, I see.
It really is. It's a gift. I love that you use the word gift. I often use the word privilege, which is also true. I think privilege in recent times has different connotations to what it used to, but I think I mean it in both, really. In the sense that I'm aware that not everyone has that privilege, but it's also a privilege to sort of play a part in someone's life. It's also a gift to us, as parents, to be able to sort of be involved in that person's life. So I fully echo your statements, really. So.
We've covered a lot in a really short time already, Joe. Yeah, these conversations do dive deep because purpose is at the core. Well, it's certainly at the forefront of your mind, my mind, when we've come into this conversation. And yet we haven't actually talked about purpose itself. So I want to ask you the focus on why for you. What's the clarity behind that for you?
I don't know whether I really have. I think when one thinks about questions of why, then you think about what would I like to achieve? What's my North Star? What's the guiding principle that is going to take me to the place that I would like to go? And I can't say I really have that. Perhaps closer to your questions about values earlier, I just have a series of values in which I'm making decisions in those moments on love, on kindness, on silent legacy, on caring for my daughter, caring for my community, and so I don't. Those maybe to answer your question, those are my why. Those things are like, am I making the best decisions I can right now with the information I have, and the thoughts in my heart, and the thoughts in my head, and the feelings in my heart. And if I'm doing those things, then I kind of feel all right. And so, why are we here? Well, biologically, we're here for procreation, for continuation of the human species, and I'm going to do my good job in doing that because I revel in parenting. Why are we here on a broader basis? Well, I think if we're here and we're here for a while, then why not make the experience better for all of us? And so I think. I think the values sort of sit core, and then they probably just inform a day-to-day decision basis, which is let's just have a nice time, let's just enjoy it. We're not here forever, and frankly, there's a lot of things that we can take very seriously, but there's also a lot of things that we can have a lot of fun at. And I think that even that idea of fun is interesting because fun is a word that is layered in. People think of fun as loud and brash and parties and stuff like that. I think that's often what I've associated fun with, or what I think people think fun is. But I find this fun, which is a nice chat with a good person, and I find my work fun, and I find helping people fun, and so I think that's beginning to answer your question. I'm not sure I have a conclusion on it, but that's where I'd start.
I'm just going to circle back to where you spoke about Gordon Ramsay and someone who you perceive as being driven by anger, but under that is the dedication to standards. And I just want to understand from your perspective the silent legacy that you want to create a world that is a kinder place. Is that also driven by anger?
No, I would say that in Gordon Ramsay's example, I may be misrepresented my thoughts in the sense that I think his standards manifest in anger, and so there was a flip that way. And so sorry, forgive me. I'll have to ask. Would you remind me of the question again?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was a case of, do you think that the desire that you want for the world to be a kinder place, and that being something that you are working towards, is that because you have an anger in the way that it is currently working?
I think inevitably, if you're walking towards something, you're walking away from something else. And so there are elements of the Marketing Meetup story, which I'll use as an example, where I speak about myself being an introverted person who walked into networking events and was terrified. And so it was clear that somewhere kinder needed to exist. And so that's why I created it. And so there is a walking away from the sliminess, from the sales, from the job titles and budgets into a place of kindness and humanity, for sure. I'd like to think that, I'm pretty relaxed on a lot of things. I think one of the things that would make me angry is unfairness. I think that's not something I respond well to. But for the most part, I'd say I'm actually far more driven towards a towards-based direction than I am an away direction. I do think there's a lot of bad in the world, but I actually spend a lot more time in a quite privileged bubble in a sense, which is around a lot of good people who are doing good things with the best of intentions. And likewise, I've lived a charmed life in terms of having loving parents and so on and so forth. So I would say I'm probably more towards than I'm away in that sense, which is a fortunate position to be in.
So tell me about this field that you felt comfortable on and then have created it. I mean, I keep thinking of Field of Dreams, but I don't want to make it like if you build it, they will come. But it is that in essence, that's what you have done, is that you've created this fantastic playing field for people to come and to join with you. And you described it as being really cool. Tell me a bit more about what you're doing.
And in terms of the practicalities of the marketing meetup or the field in general, I love how you keep it general. I like it. I like the motion. Well, I think with TMM, like if people have got to this point in the podcast, then hopefully they know the values that sort of sit behind the group and why we're doing what we're doing. And so day to day, like it's just doing those things as best as we can. And like, it's funny, like I sit in marketing and I love marketing because I think it speaks to people. And the real reason why I love marketing is if you were to take a marketing equation, then in effect, you've got a problem and you've got a solution. And as a marketer, then you are communicating the problem to that solution. And the output, the equals of that is that someone's life improves one way or another. And there's a bunch of things in there which goes into sort of like really understanding the problem that you're solving and the market and the communications channels and all that sort of stuff. But I think the thing that really I enjoy more than anything is just speaking to the core of that human and sort of looking to improve their life one way or another. And I think with the marketing meetup, then right now, then I don't preach that, but equally we won't put like people on the stage who are going to be actively making people's lives worse, like one way or another. Um, the other thing that I feel like I'm quite proud of doing is that because we've got that thing at the core of the marketing meetup, which is that story of me being the introverted person walking into the room and being terrified, then I get an abundance of pride when people walk into our rooms and they feel like it's kind and safe, and they walk in slightly, maybe a little unconfident, a little bit shy, and then they walk out with a new friend or a new bit of knowledge which helps them the next day. And like, I think when we're at our best at TMM, and this applies to being a leader and a parent too, then we take people on a journey of confidence. And we say, if their starting point is that they're not very confident and they leave very confident, then we've really done our job. But if their confidence to start off with and now just a little bit more knowledgeable, then we've also done our job. So um, it's maybe less of a field of dreams, but a field of confidence is where we're really at our best. But there's a lot of other ways that people can interact and with it, because I also got to acknowledge the reality that as much as I'm heart and soul in here, then it's a small part of everyone else's day. People have got things to do, right? So, so yeah, if I can go 100% and they go 20, then hopefully they get something out of it.
I really find the work that you're doing, I can't help but admire it. Honestly, it's so refreshing to see your contribution. And I think that is the driver here, is a contribution. And you said it's a silent legacy. And I can see that because you're not expecting recognition. But that's how you're measuring success in some respects, because you know what the results are that you want. Mm-hmm. And they're not necessarily financial results. That smile that you see, or a lift or a spring in their stride will be enough for you to know that your day has been a day well done.
Yeah, it's lovely, and I don't want to appear, completely infallible here. I love the commercial side of things as well, and that's a journey I've been on too recently. And I was embarrassed to make money at the beginning of this journey, but actually, if we can make this a really successful business, and while driving that impact, not only is that an example for other businesses to say, what, we can do that, but like that seems like a really, really great way to do it. And, so far, by our own standards, I'm sure Citibank aren't going to be knocking on our door asking us to bank with them anytime soon just yet. But like, why not one day? Why not one day have that, and at the same time create an unbelievable impact, and also then use that money to help other people. Like, what a great life. So I think there's a lot wrapped up in money, and for a long time I thought it was evil, but I've changed my opinion, and I'm living in the world of both now, and that living in the world of both is also probably one of my biggest things that I can ever reflect on. Is like, there's always nuance to these things, right? There's always another part of the argument that one could inspect and look at, and so nuance is good. Good conversation is good. Inspecting these things is good. Realizing where you are, but realizing that every decision is probably on a sliding scale rather than black and white. And money isn't bad. Impact probably has another side to it, and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Purpose-driven business nowadays, Joe, is not just a nice to have, not just an aspirational, but an essential. It's a core part of business. And I can really see the impact that you're making to the people you're working with, but also to the clients as well. What is the infinite game here? What is the future forward looking scope for your business?
Well, we're growing out now that in-person events is something that we believe is a powerful mechanism for building confidence. We've got 22 locations presently, running events every 2 months in each of them. We just picked up Tokyo and San Francisco and New York and New Zealand and stuff like that, which is cool. The infinite, I mean, I guess our sort of North Star in TMM is no marketer feels alone one way or another, and they can use that impact that is within their capabilities. They can use it to help other people one way or another. They can communicate things that are worthy. It's an interesting thing because you introduced this question by sort of saying purpose-driven business is a necessity, it's an essential, and even I think there's nuance there, because you look at like BAT or Shell or BP, and speaking about things that make you angry, then record profits, that makes me angry, and I don't think they're doing good for the world. There's nuance there because they're investing in renewables as an example, but for the most part, they're not. And so there is part of me which is like, purpose is really important, really important. That's how I am building my business and how you are building yours. If you're taking traditional metrics of success, then you could argue that the Shells and the BPs are being very, very successful, with fairly little purpose behind them. But with that knowledge that is one way of doing a business, then there is another, which is making the choices that we are making, which is to build businesses that are good and have an impact in the world that creates a net gain. And so I guess the infinite game, beyond the confidence, beyond the impact, is there's also a business example there, which is, what, we can be successful and we can drive impact and we can do good, and nice people don't finish last, and all those things that go with it. And so yeah, there's probably a few answers there, but hopefully that's useful, and hopefully we don't have to beep out the examples. I don't know whether you have to say other petrol stations are available.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation here on purpose washing that will probably not go down and talk about that. But what I would like to ask you, Joe, is imagine your daughter was old enough to listen to this conversation and reflect on it. What would she say? What do you think she would come back to you and have a conversation with you about?
I don't know. Hopefully, she'd just be saying that you're trying to do things for the right reasons, and there's hopefully that would be nice for her one way or another. I don't really mind, in a way. I don't mind what she thinks of me, really, one way or another. Not because I don't want her to love me, but because, I love her so much that, like, as long as she's happy, then it's kind of okay. So I don't really care what she thinks, but in the best way possible. It's not for me to wonder about that. I think she can form her own opinions on me and what we're doing over the course of time. In the meantime, like, we'll try and do good, and like, hopefully I make her proud. But like, I think she'll make her own choices in life, and how she chooses to perceive things, and that's okay too. I do things to make her proud, but she doesn't need to be proud if she doesn't want to, and that's okay. So it's not for me to assume, I think, is probably in a sentence.
It's kind of a trick question because, again, it's more of a reflection of your own reflection of the conversation that I was aiming for, which is, again, you answered it in a way that is so true to you, Joe. Honestly, it's been such a beautiful conversation. So thank you. How would people, having heard what you've shared with them, who feel that they would like to join you on your incredible field of confidence, how would they reach out and connect with you?
LinkedIn's the best place. I'm appalling anywhere else. So we're having a joke with the team the other day. a very short story. We were trying to figure out who could person the reception desk at one of our events the other day. In the end, we resolved to leave a note on the desk with my phone number so I could let people into the room if they needed to come in because they came in late. And so we left my mobile number, but we thought about adding the caveats about, but don't Slack me and don't email me and don't, because you just won't get a reply. Not because I'm unwilling, but just because I'm rubbish. So LinkedIn's probably the best place, and I'll do my best.
Magic. Thank you. Well, I'll put it in the show notes so people can get hold of you. And I just want to say thank you for sharing why you do what you do and why you are who you are, and wishing you all the best with your venture going forward. I can see many more locations coming up I'd love to find out how long it will take you before you have a global presence. I mean, already in 22 locations, it's incredible. And I'm sure that many more will be joining very soon because of the incredible, genuine motivation for and purpose behind what you're trying to achieve here. So yeah, fantastic. Do you have some final words, Joe, for the listener?
So the best piece of advice I ever got was from my dad, which is don't give advice, share opinions and experience. And so none of this was advice. It's just an experience and their opinion.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What value have you received from tuning in? What are your reflections with actions? Please take a moment to leave me an Apple Podcast or Spotify review sharing how Focus on Why has made a difference to you today. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. To keep it going, simply connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or join the Focus on Why Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.